What if I told you that the secret to true wealth and happiness isn't in taking, but in giving? Sounds strange, doesn't it? But let me tell you a story, an African tale that changed my perspective to life forever. This is the story of a man named Quami, a struggling farmer who discovered a powerful truth one that transformed not just his life but his entire village. And by the end of the story, you might just start seeing the world differently too.
In a quiet African village, surrounded by endless fields of golden grass, lived a man named Quami. He was a hard-working farmer. His hands were rough, his back strong, and his spirit unbreakable. From the moment the sun peaked high over the horizon, he was out in the fields digging, planting, and hoping. But no matter how hard he worked, his farm refused to flourish. Every season, his neighbors would harvest basketfuls of ripe yams and fresh maize, while Kwami's fields remained dry and barren. "Why is my land cursed?" he would whisper to himself, staring at the cracked earth beneath his feet. One evening, after another long day of labor, he sat outside his small hut, watching the sun sink. His stomach growled, his food stores were low, and his heart was heavy with worry. Just then, his mother walked over and sat beside him. "My son," she said gently, "why do you look so troubled?" Quami let out a deep sigh. "Mama, I work harder than anyone in this village, yet I have so little. I see others prosper while I struggle. I don't understand why life is so unfair." His mother looked at him with knowing eyes. "Quami," she said softly, "do you remember what your father always used to say?" Quami frowned, staring at the ground. "A closed hand receives nothing," she reminded him. He sighed. "I remember, Mama, but how can I give when I barely have enough for us?" She smiled. "That is the test, my son. Will you trust that life will give you back when you give first? Or will you keep holding on to what little you have and remain stuck where you are?" Kwame said nothing, but deep inside, her words had stirred something in him. That night, he couldn't sleep. His father's words kept on echoing on his mind. A closed hand receives nothing. Before the sun rose the next morning, Kwame did something he had never done before. He took half of his harvest, a few yams, some maize, and some cassava, and walked through the village. At first, he stopped at the widow's hut. She was old and frail, and had no family to take care of her. Kwame knocked on her door and held out a bundle of food. "Here, please take this," he said. The widow's eyes widened in shock. "Kwame, but you have so little. Why are you giving this to me?" Kwame smiled. "Because my father taught me that a closed hand receives nothing." Next, he walked to the orphan boy's home. The child often went to bed hungry, his ribs showing through his thin skin. Kwame knelt and handed him some maize. "Eat well, little one," he said kindly. The boy's face lit up with joy as he clutched the food to his chest. Then, Kwame visited an elderly man who could no longer farm. The man, his hands trembling with age, looked at Kwame with teary eyes. "My son, why would you do this for me?" Kwame repeated the words his father had once said. because a closed hand receives nothing. Word quickly spread through the village. People whispered behind his back, "Has Quami gone mad? How can he give when he barely has enough?" But Quami ignored the whispers. For the first time in his life, he felt lighter, as if a burden had been lifted from his heart. Days passed, and then weeks. At first, nothing seemed to change. Everyone continued going about their usual activities. Kwame's fields still looked the same, dry and lifeless. Suddenly, something incredible happened. One morning, as Quami walked to his farm, he stopped in his tracks, and right before his eyes, sprouting from the once barren soil, were strong green shoots. His crops, which had always struggled, were thriving. As the days passed, they grew taller, stronger, and fuller than ever before. And when harvest season arrived, Quami found himself with 3 times more food than ever before. The villagers gathered around in amazement. It was like magic. "Quami, what happened? How did your farm change like this?" Quami smiled. "When you give, life gives back to you in ways you cannot expect." That evening, Quami sat with his mother, watching the stars. "Mama," he said, "you were right. Papa was right as well. A closed hand truly receives nothing." His mother chuckled softly. "You have learned one of life's great lessons, my son," she said. From that day forward, Quami was no longer just a farmer. He became a teacher, well respected, showing others that giving is actually the key to receiving. The lesson spread throughout the village. People shared more, helped more, and in return, the entire village prospered. And so, Kwami's father's wisdom lived on, not just in Quami, but in anyone who had his story.
And that, my friend, is the power of generosity. It's not just about giving away what you have. It's about trusting that life will reward you in return. So now I ask you, what if the secret to success, happiness, and abundance is not in taking, but in giving? Think about it. If this story inspires you, don't forget to subscribe, like, share with someone who needs to hear this lesson today.